So I'm putting together a lot of insights about Luigi Mangione, who is most certainly, without a doubt, an ENTP personality in my mind. And as I've been seeing all the memes that are going around on Facebook about him, and I've also been in MBTI groups and empath groups talking about him and talking about how he's an ENTP empath on the team against narcissists. And one person asked me what my thoughts were on the fact that on personality database, so far people are typing him as ENFJ. And I replied that I think it's good that the public MBTI votes, the votes on personality database are all user generated. They're all votes from the public or the MBTI enthusiast community, And so I said, it's good that they can recognize that he's an extroverted intuitive and an empath, But people still think, using the superficial MBTI dichotomies, that NF types are the empaths and NT types are the rationals, not the empaths. But then once you get deeper into Jungian cognitive functions, you see that INTP and ENTP are actually empaths. Even though they're covert empaths, and they like to identify more as rationals than as empaths. But they're empaths regardless, all INFJ, ENFJ, INFP, ENFP, and surprisingly INTP, ENTP are all empaths. And I talked about how INTP and ENTP are less obvious empaths, covert empaths, and how this works great for anti-hero stories. And I made a specific contrast in my ENTJ intersection video, which talks about ENTJ overt narcissist Klaus Michelson, and how all of the characters surrounding him are like empaths, and the ones that are like INFJs are like super obvious empaths, and they contrast really well with the overt narcissist, but the NTPs, the INTPs like Elijah, the ENTPs like Damon, the ENTPs like Cole, they are more covert empaths. And you don't really, and on the surface, they look more like cold rationals or whatever as NT types, And so people don't immediately identify them as empaths. When they think of empaths, they don't immediately first think of INTP or ENTP. Or if they see INTP and ENTP, they don't immediately pick up on the fact that they're empaths, because they stay a little covert about it so that they won't be like wusses crying all the time like Stefan Salvatore, INFJ Stefan Salvatore, So the fact that the people voting can see that he's an empath, but they just decided to make him an NF type to represent that he's an empath instead of an NTP type, when NTP types are just as much true empaths as NFJs, but they're just less obvious about it. They're more covert about it. So I think it's very good that the votes could correctly identify him as an extroverted intuitive type and as an empath type, even though they messed up, they called him an NF because they thought they properly recognized he was an empath, so they made him an NF type, when really, when they properly recognized him as an empath, they should have typed him as an NTP type instead of an NF type, And NFJs, they are more likely to go to like preacher, counselor, psychologist type professions, while NTPs are more likely to go to like math and engineering and stuff. That's another thing that throws you off, and you're like, are they empaths, because they're like these rational mathematical engineers or whatever. So they should have realized that as an engineer, he's more likely to be an NTP than an NFJ. And so I hope, part of me hopes that this case is real and that we have a real ENTP empath hero to root for, and I would say everyone needs to write him letters of support, especially empaths, for taking one for the team in the war that's as old as recorded history between empaths and narcissists. He should get all the love and support. Like, ENTPs, when they go bad, and turn into killers, usually they join the dark side. It's like, if you can't beat them, join them. We live in a narcissist majority world or whatever. So they might turn into like serial killers like Richard Ramirez or Ted Bundy or whatever, or Henry Evans from The Good Son, you know, and like use their empathic abilities for evil or whatever, you know. And so if an ENTP empath is going to kill, I would much rather them be doing it in the fight against evil, you know, standing up as empaths, righteous empaths against evil. So against narcissists as the personification of evil. So I am really obsessed with this case. It sort of seems false flag to me in many ways, like all the memes that are all over Facebook about him with like just Joe Blows, tons of Joe Blows, and nobody's giving him alibis and stuff, saying, oh, Luigi was here with me, you know, during the time of the murder and barbecuing or whatever, you know. And like hundreds and thousands of people are making these alibis on Facebook within a week after the crime, when I'm just barely even picking it up. Like, it almost seems staged to get sympathy for like corrupt, narcissistic, you know, industry leaders or whatever, you know. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is some kind of staged false flag thing or whatever. But if it's real, you know, either way, whether this is real new, you know, or it's staged for some kind of political agenda or whatever, you know, either way, he is an ENTP personality. He is an empath. He's another example, just like INTP Elijah, ENTP Damien, ENTP Cole Mikeson. He's another example of those NTP covert empaths, those subtle, not so obvious empaths that are still always empaths, you know, no matter how much they mimic narcissists in a culture made by, for, and surrounded by narcissists, they're always empaths, those NTPs. And so Luigi is another great example of this, of an NTP that is, you know, a less obvious, covert kind of empath, you know. But it's not like it wasn't at all obvious, you know. A lot of his friends talk about how idealistic he is and how much he wanted to make the world a better place and things like that, you know. But I think it's a little suspicious how the sheer number of memes, you know, on Facebook in this week about him, giving him alibis, as if the public, you know, the general public is all on board for this kind of modern day Robin Hood, sticking it to these, you know, narcissistic robber barons or whatever, you know. And that seems very unlikely that the general public is so in tune like that, you know, to righteousness or whatever. So I don't know. It all seems very weird and staged to me, how many Joe Blows are posting alibis for him on the internet, memes, alibis, you know. So, but it's very appropriate that an ENTP is going down in history with like tons of hilarious memes, but also like righteous empath, Robin Hood type memes too. So it just totally fits. This Luigi fits the ENTP profile absolutely perfectly. He looks a lot like ENTP Cole Mikeson. He looks a lot like ENTP CS Joseph. People with physical, similar personality types can share physical features. And so I see the similarities there, like as clear as day. So it's not like I'm encouraging all empaths to, you know, do what he's done or whatever. But, but if he's already done it, you know, I don't see the harm in, you know, at least analyzing, you know, if not celebrating, you know, what he was trying, what he thought, what he saw himself as doing, which was like standing up to narcissistic evil in the world. And so for the NTPs that, and other people that don't want to identify NTPs as empaths, you know, in some ways you could think of them as like half rationals, half empaths. MPNE types like to be like all the things without, you know, being exclusive of other things, you know. So, you know, they might like to think of themselves as like not all rational, but not all empath or whatever, you know, but having a foot in both worlds or whatever. And so if you want to think of them as half empath, half rational, that's okay, even though they're still full-blown empath as far as the mutually exclusive dichotomy of empaths and narcissists. And that's why it's important to distinguish them as empaths, because that means they can never be narcissists, no matter how much they mimic narcissists. So they are fully empaths, but if you prefer to think of them or whatever as like half rationals, half empaths, And so him reviewing INTP Ted Kaczynski, Unabomber's manifesto, and it resounding with him makes sense, because the INTP Ted Kaczynski was also an INTP covert empath, half empath, half rational, etc., that was trying to stand up to narcissists, and evil in the world. And so it totally makes sense, and it fits that the ENTP, resounded with the INTP, and ended up following a similar trajectory.
And completely out of touch, and it's an insult to the intelligence of the American people. It's lived experience.
So I just want to read Luigi's full manifesto right here. It's very short, unlike the INTP that actually fleshed out a real manifesto. This is super abbreviated. It's not even really a manifesto, but I'm gonna read it anyways. So, to the feds, I'll keep this short because I do respect what you do for our country. To save you a lengthy investigation, I state plainly that I wasn't working with anyone. This was fairly trivial. Some elementary social engineering, basic CAD, CAD, a lot of patience. The spiral notebook, if present, has some straggling notes and to-do lists that illuminate the gist of it. My tech is pretty locked down because I work in engineering, so probably not much info there. I do apologize for any strife of traumas, but it had to be done. Frankly, these parasites simply had it coming. A reminder, the US has the #1 most expensive healthcare system in the world, yet we rank roughly number 42 in life expectancy. United is the largest company in the US by market cap, behind only Apple, Google, and Walmart. It has grown and grown, but has our life expectancy? No. The reality is these blanks have simply gotten too powerful, and they continue to abuse our country for immense profit because the American public has allowed them to get away with it. Obviously, the problem is more complex, but I do not have space, and frankly, I do not pretend to be the most qualified person to lay out the full argument. But many have illuminated the corruption and greed, e.g. Rosenthal, more, decades ago, and the problems simply remain. It's not an issue of awareness at this point, but clearly power games at play. Evidently, I'm the first to face it with such brutal honesty. So, the last thing I included was a screencast of all of Luigi Mangione's tweets going all the way back from the present all the way back to April of 2016. And so I think that these tweets definitely reinforce my case that he's an NT type. I just screencast and scrolled through his entire list of tweets and retweets and stuff. I did not read them out loud. I did not exhaust myself reading them all out loud. I did not go slow enough for you all to read. I did not screencast slow enough for you all to read it on the screen either. So if you want to read it all, we'll have to pause and read every word. But all of his tweets are very interesting. And as you can see, like most of his tweets, you would think he's more of an NT type. Like the people that he's retweeting, the ideas that he's retweeting, when he's talking about like big society issues, like talking about population distributions and birth rates and all this other stuff, you know, he's coming at it from a very logical perspective. So I think the fact that he was driven to actually take extreme action against our narcissistic society, made by and for and surrounded by narcissists, you know, shows that he is an empath, just like I've been arguing that INTPs and ENTPs are actually surprisingly empaths, covert empaths that we don't expect to be empaths. And so the fact that he took this kind of action and was driven from an emotional place kind of shows that he's an empath. But his Twitter feed, you know, it really shows the NT side of him, that he very much identifies as irrational and is analyzing issues in the world from like an NT perspective.